Here's what happened. Today, went to Whole Foods with my life partner, and it's one of my favorite spots for getting groceries. We were able to pick everything up, went to the checkout, and I was being an ass, is what it felt like at checkout. So what happened, for context, was I was unloading the groceries. We both got rotisserie chickens, and I asked the guy if he could put it in a separate bag for the chicken. So he goes to grab this bag, and I'm looking at the bag and thinking, okay, that's small. Like, that's too small. The guy that doesn't do this for like multiple times in a week, but hundreds of times. So I'm like, hey, like I say something like, hey, I think that bag's too small. Like I'm gonna grab this other bag, which is like the normal size bag. Didn't realize it at the time, but I grab it, and of course I'm like, oh shit, all right. Throw the chicken in, and I put it in the cart. And then what happens is later on, he goes and grabs my life partner's chicken and puts it in the bag he was going to give me, and it was able to hold the chicken. So then I'm thinking, oh shit, like I messed up. Like that was a moment where it clicked for me of, dude, you just micromanaged his job. And that can happen for us so many times in the day, in so many areas of life. And so I had to tell him, I let him know, hey, like, didn't realize how big those bags were. We were able to close up the convo and continue on with our day. But that was a moment for me, and it's what sparked it for today's convo of what I want to get into. So this is Make Burnout Extinct. I'm Robert David Weeks. I want to say thank you for being here. Could be doing a bunch of different stuff in your day. So I appreciate you taking that time to be here to focus on this topic of micromanaging, letting go. I know for me, that is something over the years that has been a focus, and still to this day is something that I got to work on. And I want you to know that you're not alone if you have challenges with this and you're just like, why can't I let go in certain things? I want you to know that I get you. There is wanting to have that sense of control. We want that, but when we can take it too far, that's where it can also lead to burnout. It's trying to control everything in our life, all the single details. That becomes overwhelming. And so that might be a situation that you're in right now where you feel like you are trying to do all the things in your day. And that is something that I know it can be coming from a great place of like wanting to make sure everyone else is taken care of and all things are taken care of. So I honor that. And what can happen is it can go to the extreme where then you feel so exhausted at the end of the day. You feel that overwhelm. Then you have this anxiety of like, how is this future going to look for me? Like, I feel like this is going to be my permanent reality. So you can go down those spirals in thought patterns that can have a negative response to your body and cause you to go towards a one-way ticket to hitting burnout, and especially hit that first red flag of chronic exhaustion. So I want to acknowledge that for you. And I also want to let you know that if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe and follow the show for the latest episodes, because I'm going to be getting into it now with this one, but I have a commitment for you as well. So the first one is to continue to grow this show. So by you following and subscribing to the show, you're going to be able to help me to honor that commitment. And then also I'm committed to being honest with you, especially think of this combo, being honest with you for the truth. And sometimes the truth can be very uncomfortable. I know that for me, I can struggle with that of actually realizing, hey, this is the truth and I really got to accept this. And when it comes to micromanaging, at times it can be difficult for me to let go and acknowledge that I am micromanaging. And there's a moment where I got to let it go. The stress is not going to be worth it. That's going to build from this. It's just going to hit towards burnout. So that's another commitment I have for you. And then also to continue to improve as a storyteller, as a researcher for the information I'm gathering here and sharing with you, and as an interviewer for the guests that are coming on and sharing their insights. And it all comes back to this mission of Make Burnout Extinct. That's what I want for you in your life. And what that means is to have a better life, to be able to move towards who it is we want to become, and to feel that aliveness. And doesn't mean that we don't have those tough days and those hard days, but we are focused on the majority of time of having burnout extinct in our life. And by doing that, you're then able to open up doorway to more possibilities for your life of where you want to go, and the vision you have for it, which is something that I'm fired up for you to be able to experience. So I appreciate you being here, taking the time. Let's get into it. Today, I do want to talk about letting go of micromanaging. When it comes to that situation at checkout, what happened there was leading up, hadn't eaten. I was not feeling present. Like it felt rushed. We had a bunch of other stuff we had going on in the day. And that is what can be happening for you in life and so I want to tell you that yes, there's a part here of having to take that responsibility, but I get that you have all these other things going on. So there are going to be moments where we make mistakes. So the mistakes happen. What's important is learning the lesson from the mistake and then letting go of the mistake. And it can be similar in this combo that we're having of letting go of the micromanaging, being able to recognize it and letting go. So what's helpful is instead of trying to let go in the moment is like, how do we prevent this from happening, from you getting into the micromanaging mode? So one is awareness. What's important to ask yourself is what areas of your life are you feeling like you're micromanaging? Take that moment, right? You might actually, we'll take a deep breath in when it comes to micromanaging. Let's do this thing. Let's take a deep breath in. Deep inhale and then exhale. What are those like 1 to 2 areas that are popping up? Is it focused with your partner? And for example, like how they're cleaning the dishes or how you have the room set up. Is it at work with team members and you're feeling like you're micromanaging other people's tasks rather than focusing on your own work or just letting go of the responsibilities? Could it be with your habits, thinking of in health and fitness, like with your habits of wanting to know every single detail of your workout, all the metrics, having to get all that set up and all that data lined up? What I do want to say is the more you understand, the less scary something becomes. But then there's clarity there of having to let go. There's a certain harmony that you have to have of understanding and letting go. Because if you have too much, kind of like one of those moments where you feel like I'm like, for me, I got my shoulders up and it's like the tense feeling. You're like, ah, that vibe can create more stress for the body. And then that can elevate the anxiety that we could be feeling, the overwhelm, this pressure and this tension that builds in the body. And again, that moves us towards chronic exhaustion, towards that first red flag that then creates a domino effect of going for a one-way ticket to burnout. And that's something I don't want for you. So got to figure out our harmony. And that first one is being able to figure out what are those 1 or 2 areas. Now that you have that, what I want to go through are some things to think about for lessons that I've learned with letting go of micromanaging, how to do that process. And then I want to get into time for you to go through a body practice of reconnecting with your body, because presence is really helpful to be able to let go in micromanaging. And I'll get into that connection, but we'll have a moment to go through connecting back to the body, or in the standpoint of bringing your awareness back to the body, because we are connected, we just may not realize it. So it's bringing that awareness back through this body practice. But going back to actually presence is where I can kick it off for you. When we are present, then we can feel centered and grounded in that moment. And a way that can be helpful is if you feel like you have that pinballing going on in your mind, you're like pinballing from one thing to the next, you feel rushed, you catch yourself, because that is leading and preparing you to micromanage, of like having to be, I think of another moment, like I kind of like, for me, I haven't gotten a haircut. Like for those that on video, you can see it, but for me, like I haven't had a haircut, so my hair is like gets really big. So it's like that like wide-eyed feeling of like, it can even be like this paranoid, like I gotta have everything taken care of, and that is very stressful. Like I would ask you that, like, is it exciting to be in that state? And my guess would be no. So presence can help us to take a moment to pause and be able to respond to our surroundings and the situations that we're in. So for example, what I could have done leading up to that moment of unloading the food was I was already feeling that rushed feeling and not feeling present. So I could have taken a moment to just take a deep breath, to recognize, come back to the body, do a deep inhale, which we'll do together, and then out. Already I feel present and more grounded. So that's one, and it's so simple. But then it goes back to the simple shift that has to happen is trust. So there has to be trust in the people. If it's involving another person, like a partner, friends, this person, the checkout guy, and trust with ourselves. that we have all the information we need in order to let go. Right. So there's that body response because there's this quote, I'm going to paraphrase it. I don't know it exactly, but basically like, if you can't control your emotions, you try to control other people. Something like, does that hit? Right. Like we try to control everything else in our lives if we feel like we're out of control for those emotions. And what's really important, and this is a big part of the Make Burnout Extinct, is when we can understand our emotions and master them and learn the lessons in them, it helps us to make burnout extinct. Like that's what's so cool about this for coming back to the body. So that might be also a situation they're in, is trying to control it, everyone else and all the other things. So in order to have that trust of all the information, it's asking questions. So what I could have done for that moment at checkout was to say to the guy, hey, I'm noticing that this bag is too small. Is it going to fit the chicken? Yes, the past me would have been like, with not being direct. Usually when I'm not direct, it's because I don't want to offend someone or ask a stupid question. Because in the past, that would happen, and I'd either get made fun of that or look really stupid. So, that's usually why I wouldn't be direct with my questioning, or I didn't want to offend someone or make someone angry. But in this moment, it's like I can just ask that question and he can let me know, like, oh yeah, and then we could joke about it. So that could have been a question I could have asked. You could have a few questions that come to mind right now or come into your awareness that you can ask for people, if it's work related to, partner, family, to be able to have the information needed in order to let go. Like I think of another one with the dishes is being able to ask, hey, like I noticed that these dishes have been in here. Are you going to be able to get them, I know you said you were going to get them done. Are you going to be able to get them done before going to bed? And if they say yes, then you have to have that trust. Does it always happen? No, nobody's perfect. But then you get to let go of the tension that can build and the pressure and the stress that can build, right? And if you notice there's a pattern that happens where like 5 times in a row this doesn't happen, well, then there's a conversation that's needed to be had, right? But you're responding rather than create these narratives and assuming that in your mind. And that's where then the stress can build and you can move towards hitting chronic exhaustion. I mean, it's exhausting to think of all the potential scenarios and try to control every single thing in our lives. So I want you to take that moment to let that sit with you and notice if that resonates for you. So that's one, is the questions, right? Then it comes back to, with the trust within ourselves, it's how are we then showing up in that moment? Do we notice that we actually are not listening to what the other person is saying? Because we tend to want to like always share our opinions and our views. Especially I think about that overall as a society, we seem to be in that state of constantly sharing, constantly having opinion, constantly putting our 2 cents in there. But how much are we actually listening? So that comes back to when I've shared it before, the way that you make burnout extinct is you listen to your body and you notice the signals when you're moving towards hitting burnout. And then when you can notice those signals, you can change your behavior and those habits and move in the opposite direction. So for me, it's like, am I listening to what the guy's saying? Am I listening to actually the situation that's happening in front of me and observing it and making sure that I'm present? So that's another thing to focus on. And then the third one I want to get into before we get into this body practice is that giving yourself grace and flexibility is so important. Being able to remind yourself that perfection doesn't exist, because perfection could be one way, trust is the other. And so perfection could be like you want everything to be perfect. And that can be due to multiple reasons. But what I would ask you is like, is having every single thing perfect, all little details, how is that going for you? Truly. Do you feel more stressed out? Or is it like really exciting? My guess, if you are here listening to this, watching this, it is more stressful. So that's a moment where we got to make a change here. And a way that I do this, I think about it as 90%. So I relate this back to habits, and this is something you think about with habits. And again, all our behaviors that we do repetitively, you can think of them as habits, right? Tying your shoe, that's a habit. Going outside for a walk, if you're doing that constantly is a habit. Putting on clothes is a habit. So that's how you can think about it. And what I like to do is certain habits that I'm focusing on. I have 12 habits in the day. This is inspired through a program I went through called Lifebook, where I have 12 habits that I'm consciously focusing on to become more consistent with them and help get these habits into the autopilot phase for my life. So what I give myself is 90% completion, meaning in a month, I would give myself just 3 days to be able to take a day off from this habit, or like with life happening, like giving myself that flexibility. And do I have habits that go more than 3 days? Yes. Am I making progress towards who it is I want to become? Do I feel like I'm doing that? Yes. Do I feel like I have that momentum? Yes. Right. So this is important, is again, going back to perfection doesn't exist. But that's a great starting point, is that 90%. Gives you some opening and flexibility, so you don't have that like tension, squeezing of the entire body feeling of like, I have to do this for every single day for the rest of my life. Right. So it gives you that flexibility to open up, and you can always change these habits. That's another thing too. And I think about that with how you're approaching letting go of micromanaging. You can change your approach of how you're doing that. It's noticing what resonates for you to be able to do that, and then being able to move forward. But those are simple ways that you can get started on this after we're done. Like, thinking back as a recap for you, it's being able to ask the questions so that you can prep for that. Being present, so remembering coming back to the breath, coming back to the breath, being able to just breathe, take a moment to breathe deep and exhale, and then noticing, are you listening to the context of the situation? And then the final one is 90%, giving yourself grace. Now let's get into a body practice to be able to anchor this in. So it's a moment for you to reconnect with your body. I want to take out reconnect, because you are connected. I mean, your body's here, but it's being able, with that reconnection, bringing awareness back. So yeah, it is both. We're going with both here. So it's reconnect, awareness, bringing it back in this moment. So if you are driving, please keep your eyes on the road. Please. If you're running or out exercising, like, keep what you're doing, but you can still come back to awareness in your body. So it's a moment first to come back to your breath. So you can take a deep inhale in through the nose and out through the mouth. You can take a few seconds if needed right now. You can pause this to go and find a good place, if you can, that you're not going to be having any distractions. So if you need to find a more comfortable spot, hang out on the bed or couch, or if it's like going to a separate office room while you're listening to this, whatever you got to do, take that moment to get settled in the space. Doing another deep inhale and then exhale. And as you continue to breathe in through the nose and breathe out through the mouth at a natural pace, be able to like look around at your surroundings. Notice what's around you here. Like for me, I go back to see a mirror, see a computer, see books. I'm coming back into the presence, in the present moment. The awareness of the room. And now, being able to come back and focusing on the parts of the body. Being able to start with your head. And noticing any sensations, tingles. I'm going to move my hands down my body here so you can follow along. Going to the ears. And reflecting back, going back to what are those 1 or 2 areas that you feel that you are micromanaging right now, that you want to let go. As you do, coming to your cheeks, to your nose, your mouth, down to your throat, noticing any tension, pressure, just being able to bring awareness to it. Don't need to change anything. You can just be aware of it and notice what the body's trying to tell you. As you move on down to the neck, and then the shoulders. Thinking now, what are 1 or 2 questions that you can prepare to ask in order to get more information, in order to have that trust in yourself and the trust if it's with another person that you can let go of the micromanaging? What information do you need for that question? As you're noticing with your shoulders, what's happening, I'm going to relax them a little bit, get the relaxing vibes down. Moving into my chest, down into my stomach. I gotta have dinner here soon. Get some food. And then going up to the arms. So noticing the arms, biceps, forearms, down to the hands. You've been wiggling the fingers. And then noticing in those moments where you micromanage, where can you have taken a time to breathe? And let's put it this way, I mean, you're breathing for being alive, but where could you have done a conscious breath? Having a moment of pause, take a deep inhale in, and then exhale out. And when you can look back on the past for those moments, now you can prepare for the future. Where can you prepare for these moments to take that pause? Is it right before the question, before asking a question? Or is it another time? And then as we come on back, we're going to move from the stomach, bringing your awareness to your thighs, groin, moving on down to the knees, to the calves. And then bring your awareness to the grace. How can you bring that 90% into your life? Where can you let go when it comes to perfection? Is that a challenge for you of wanting things to be perfect? That could be a moment of why is that? And then this is my reminder to you that perfection doesn't exist. We all make mistakes. Some way, shape, or form. We have our faults, we have our challenges. As part of the human experience, it helps us to connect to our aliveness. Is to recognize and accept that we are going to have those challenges. So as you move on down to the calves, continuing to focus on your breathing of inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Being able to come back into going into those habits, going into the situations and those areas of life that you micromanage. How can you give yourself some flexibility? Give yourself that grace. Moving on down to the feet, bring our awareness down there. You can wiggle the toes. And then have this moment for you. Man, you may not have done this yet today, right? This hits. Just having this time. You can always come back to this to reconnect with this intention of letting go of the micromanaging. But start small with this. Start small. And when you are able to let go, even if it's not fully let go of the micromanaging, but you get better at it, of being able to let go, celebrate. Physically celebrate. I've talked about this before. I do the double tap on my shoulders, raise my arms up, and I go, yeah. Like I scream, like I scored a touchdown or a goal. That's not how I started. I started more of like one arm up. Woo! That was it. Because I was, been embarrassed to like celebrate around people for some reason. You may be in a similar situation. So start small. Celebrate the small wins because they lead to the big ones. And then you can come back into the space that you're around. Bring your awareness back. If you have your eyes closed, you can open up those eyes. Come back to this space. And if you haven't heard it yet, I want you to know I believe in you. You're capable as a human being to be able to let go of the micromanaging. This is a habit that you are building. And it may be one that you may be having to move through this slow, because it's been years of building in this micromanaging and this intense stress and overwhelm, right? So it's recognizing that for a perspective. This isn't going to happen overnight, but you can start the process, and you can notice the momentum that comes from that and the changes that happen. And remembering the 3 phases of the habit formation process. It'll be awkward at the beginning for the body. There will be then natural resistance that comes up from the body, because with anything new, it can create uncertainty for the body, which then creates fear response. And that's where then we have the stress response that happens for the body. And it wants to pull you back to those old ways and old patterns, because that is familiar. And therefore, that can feel safe, even if it is still causing that stress and that overwhelm. And then once you move through that resistance phase, you go into the autopilot phase, where it's less friction there, similar to that habit of like brushing your teeth or tying your shoe. And then you may have to repeat that cycle a few times as life happens and new things, challenges come your way. But you're building these connections for you and your body and this trust. And what I want you to know too is that after you're done with this, you can start this process. And then from there, build the momentum. You got this.